Forward to socialism, forward. Down with capitalism, down. Down with capitalism, down. Amandla. Now, Comrade Deputy President, thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to share some words on behalf of the SACP. Let me greet you and through the President of POPCRU, President Ngwenya, and his entire leadership, members of the NOBs, members of the NEC, and Central Executive Committee delegates. The former President, Dr. Capitalism, and the founding leaders and former NOBs of POPCRU. The Deputy President of COSATU, Comrade Mike Shingange, the fellow fighter. I must say, President, uthi kimi yalwa le. So I see you are joining the ranks of the fellow fighters. Yeah, welcome to the ranks, Comrade President. Let me also greet the General Secretary of COSATU, Comrade Soli Petwe. The SACP delegation, led by Comrade Inequality, and the NC delegation present here. All our invited guests, especially to welcome our international guest to this important POPCRU CEC. And also to recognize various divisions that functions with POPCRU. And I think it's very important that other unions should emulate your academic division. It's a special division. I was at that Indaba, where I watched and listened and learned a lot from various presentations by doctors from your academic wing, the research wing, who are doing a marvelous work with regard to the scope that you organize in. But let me say, all protocol observed. And to start by wishing you a happy birthday. Happy birthday, POPCRU, happy birthday. Comrade President, you have said so much that I was wondering what to say, what you did not cover. Just to emphasize, what we'll be saying is just an emphasis. There's too much confluence, too much convergence of perspectives from what you have presented here today. And we want to thank you for that. We also want to say we welcome the Indaba that you have spoken about. We'll want to engage with that particular process. We think it's very critical. And we have also raised fundamental issues as part of the agenda of this Indaba. Amongst those, I can tell you that a lot of them converges with our own program. For instance, the land question. We can never be a free country without control of our land. The Communist Party launched a campaign called Maubuya Umhlaba. Maubuya Umhlaba campaign, bring back the land, because the land is ours. We launched this campaign 1998. And in 2005, we ended up having the National Land Summit convened by government. And that took away the steam of this campaign because government pretended they understood the campaign. And they never implemented the gist of the campaign. Our people still remain landless. So this is very important the agenda of the Indaba that you have spoken about. Comrade President, you are gathered here at a very decisive moment in our struggle for workers' rights and the upliftment of the working class. And we have articulated clearly the stance of the working class, the stance of the workers. You come here at a point where the setbacks that we are facing are very significant, but our resolve must remain even more formidable, the way you presented the report, the political report, and the main address to the CEC. We are with you on the primary content of your program. Our movement has suffered a major blow in the 2024 elections. For the first time, we lost our outright majority. But within a short space of time, we suffered another major blow with the current ANC leadership's choice to form a coalition arrangement with the right-wing neoliberal anti-national democratic revolution, anti-people organization and a reactionary force, the DA. They hide this arrangement with the DA in the name of Government of National Unity. Helen Zille had affirmed this question, not any other person, but the main partner of the African National Congress. She says so herself in her own words. The ANC has never disputed her. She said, this thing of the Government of National Unity is a sidestep. The real issue is that there's a coalition between the ANC and the DA. And that when President Ramaphosa felt that there will be people in the ANC who will oppose and not want to work with the DA, he felt he must open this thing up into a Government of National Unity, invite everybody. But the primary thing is that this is a coalition between the DA and the ANC. This perspective we share. We have said it ourselves. But while it is called a Government of National Unity, this is essentially a label to legitimize it, to provide this cover for the political and ideological decision and choice of the leaders of the African National Congress, who set up this entity without engaging its alliance forces. The DA, comrades, represents the very essence of apartheid beneficiaries, the very essence of the continuation of colonialism. In other words, they represent the continuation of a counter-revolutionary agenda that is now coalescing with our movement. We have said openly, the ANC must never want to recolonize our country through the back door. We will never accept any recolonization in whatever form it takes. So we have to be clear, comrade, that our struggle for the rights and dignity of the working class will not waver. We will not tolerate any rightward shift in government, whether in composition of government or in the policy direction that government is taking. We will intensify and be steadfast in our opposition to any parties and organizations and policies that undermine the working class struggle and the hard-won labor rights of our country. That is why, Comrade President, we agree with you. The rights of workers must never be tampered with by any government. Many workers died in the battles to fight for these rights. Therefore, the attack on the collective bargaining, which continues even today, It's unacceptable, and we reject that with the contempt that it deserves. The attack by the National Treasury, launched against the workers, launched against Resolution 1 of 2018, it's an example of disregard for workers' rights. We can all recall the struggles and sacrifices made to secure that resolution, which promised hard-won wage adjustments and protections for public sector workers. But in 2020, the government with the National Treasury at the center, and I'm glad, Comrade President, we didn't compare notes on this. You were quite clear. Okay, let me say, I come to our office quite often to discuss in general, but we didn't compare notes on this. But we were quite clear to point out this elephant in the room. So, that National Treasury's intervention and that decision to betray the agreement with workers is indefensible. They refused to honor that commitment. This action, comrade, was an affront to the very principles of collective bargaining, betraying not only the public servants, but also the spirit of the workers' movement in South Africa. The many achievements from many sacrifices by our workers, and the decline of the African National Congress, mainly but not only in metropolitan municipalities, but throughout local government elections in 2021, for instance, was a direct consequence of the erosion of working class trust in the ANC because of the primary betrayal of the workers in the collective bargaining. I remember we had a discussion with one minister. He's now the Minister of the Police. Comrade Senzo, he was Minister of Public Administration. He made an attempt to consult the Communist Party. You know, these comrades, I think they were in cabinet. But you know, the alliance I got consult on decision in Funuguatata. I'm going to consult the alliance. So he came there with the idea that he will then go out and say, we have consulted everybody, including the alliance. So when we realized what he was coming up with, I set up a formidable team to go and meet with him. I brought comrades who were negotiators in the bargaining system. We went there with a formidable team. And when we met with him, we had extensive discussions. And we advised him. We said, comrade, firstly, honor the agreement with the workers. And secondly, don't take workers to court. And he said, no, it's not us who are taking workers to court. We said, go to court and say you are having a political discussion to resolve this matter with the trade union. And somehow, I can tell you that union was persuaded to go to court. Because we said to him, if you go to court and win against workers, we as a movement will lose the trust of workers on us. And workers will no longer see you as an ally. But if you go and lose against workers, equally, workers will never come to the movement for anything. Don't go to court. That's our fundamental advice. They wanted to go to court to justify the attack on workers' rights. We rejected that. So they don't listen to advice, some of these comrades, when they're in government. I hope he will listen to you now when he's in this department. But at the same time, comrade, this attack on hard-won collective bargaining gains by workers contributed in no small measure to the gradual working class loss of confidence on the movement as a whole, now highlighted in the recent electoral decline of the African National Congress. The shift from revolution to reformism and the inevitable policy failures of reformist policies indicated the persisting high levels of unemployment in our country, deepening inequality, crime, poverty, corruption, and the intransigent turn to neoliberalism by our government. Starting way back, Comrade President, you are right. This neoliberalism doesn't start with the government of national unity. We need to be very clear. In fact, 1996 was a major culmination, but it started with the apartheid regime. When de Klerk, in his speech to announce the release of President Nelson Mandela in Parliament, we were excited by the release of President Nelson Mandela. The entire speech was an economic speech about neoliberalism. South African government was entering the highway of privatization and neoliberal economic trajectory at that time. That is why the apartheid regime at that time, they've already begun the process to sell some of the state-owned enterprises, like Sasol and so forth. So you are right, Comrade President, 1996 was to deepen this with the introduction of GEAR. And yes, both COSATU and the SACP rejected this. You know, I don't know what is the wisdom of leadership, but you are very right. How does leaders withstand so much trauma for decades when a government refuses to change despite engagement? You highlighted some of these questions, Comrade President, including what the leadership of POPCRU under President Dr. Capitalism went through for this many years. The decline of services because of neoliberalism, the austerity measures imposed on every single public sector division in our country. But this shift from revolution to reformism left us with no other choice, that we have to confront this reality today. Collective bargaining, for instance, for us, is a non-negotiable pillar of workers' rights, while at the same time intensifying the struggle for socialism as the most suitable way forward for the solution of our country. The rights won by blood, sweat, and unity are not bargaining chips to be tossed away in a moment of convenience by the political leaders. Therefore, we stand with POPCRU and other progressive unions in demanding that the government fulfills its commitment to workers. Betrayal of any sort is intolerable and is unacceptable. As the working class, we must never rest until we secure the complete emancipation of the workers and establish a just society. A just society cannot happen under capitalism. But the struggle must continue within the framework of capitalism as we move to a socialist society wherein a people's just society will be created. Not a society that worships the rich, that worships money. Ngokuvakashela amadlozi, Comrade President. Ukuyovenerate amadlozi. Now, under the bourgeois society, if veneration is to capital, is to profit, is to the rich, is to money, there's no veneration to truth and to justice. Therefore, we are with you as you build a resilient, united, disciplined, and a radical trade union movement. And the theme of this Central Executive Committee of building a sustainable organization in defense of collective bargaining resonates with our vision for a united, progressive, and class-conscious trade union movement. And I'm very happy, Comrade President, that POPCRU is counted among those unions that belong to this class-conscious trade union movement. Those that we characterize principally as the red unions, the unions of consciousness. You know, we had a brief discussion the other time with some trade union leaders. And Comrade Ladla was in this meeting. I said to him, no, let's put POPCRU aside. Because we are going to POPCRU mongameli into eniyenzile to the Communist Party, we have honored it ourselves, Dr. Cebekulu, President. Sayi-honorisha into nayenza ku-Communist Party. Nasakhela umuzi. Siyabonga. That's too fundamental. When you took that corner, when you turned the page, we said this union is never going to go back. It's a red union. Keep up the fight. Bengumbulisa la Mapaila, President. Ngithi ayo wahamba no Mapaila. Siyabonga banilithayara ngoqolo. Sibonga kakhulu. The contribution iyenzwa by the spouses of our leaders behind the back. Because they've taken all the pressures, the difficulties, the trials and tribulations, the attacks. Every other time when you retire back home, you retire to these spouses, to these comrades, our wives and husbands. Siyababonge. As comrades, you succeed and you will succeed. We must continue to challenge the root cause of this exploitation, which is the capitalist system. We must mobilize every worker from every sector to join hands in the common cause to defend collective bargaining, to demand decent work conditions and safe working conditions, to push for radical policy changes that prioritizes the working class. We are with you, comrades, when you say members first, when you say workers first. You should not be apologetic to anyone. The centrality of workers first is the political correctness of the strategy of organization of the workers. You are therefore very right as POPCRU. You are right, Comrade President. Our movement is at a crossroads. If we do not act decisively, neoliberal forces will completely seize control of our future. They will consolidate their power and erode every gain we've made. The SACP therefore calls on POPCRU to intensify its organizing, recruitment, as well as its strategy to educate its members, to empower workers, to demand and fight for more justice for all of our people. You are one of a few unions that its main task in your own foundation is civil rights and justice for the people. This is fundamental. You are therefore naturally socialist in orientation as the union. At the moment, comrades, we are facing difficulties, starting from within the framework of the alliance. The reconfiguration of the alliance has not happened, and the pro-worker future is diminishing right in our eyes. Therefore, the alliance current trajectory is unsustainable. Without reconfiguration, comrades, we are at the risk of further capitulation to capital, further capitulation to right-wing interest, to neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is nothing else but modern-day capitalism. This modern-day capitalism has got some features. One of it is that there must be less state participation in the affairs of society. That is why the austerity measures, which are budget cuts in the public sector, are meant to create that the state will ultimately rely on the private sector for any service that they were supposed to implement. It's the core principle of neoliberalism. So we have to confront this attack on the workers and on society. At the same time, comrades, since May 2024 elections, we have seen the alliance drifting aimlessly, with no concerted action and any plan for the national democratic revolution to be brought on track. The NDR has been derailed. There's no joint leadership, no clear direction for our collective goals. We face an elite pact formed with the apartheid beneficiaries represented by the DA, who are determined to derail further the radical policy changes that are embedded in the national democratic revolution. On the contrary, they are deepening austerity in order to dislodge the national democratic revolution. This concept of the national democratic revolution is the strategic framework of the alliance. The basis of the alliance is this national democratic revolution. But what is this national democratic revolution that we speak about so much, that we think is now been dislodged? First is people's power. When the people can rule themselves and determine their destiny, they can control the significant power in society, particularly under bourgeois system, which is state power. When you lose state power is not in your control. It's controlled by outside forces from New York, Paris, and London. They determine what policy must happen in any particular country. The leaders use our parliamentary platform to justify foreign ideologies and foreign interests in our own country. We need our own organic interventions based on the material conditions in our country. Now you have researchers, you have the leaders of the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD countries based in Paris and New York and London, writing research about our country, and they have never been here. You have never been so concrete, Comrade President, by some of the analogies you gave here. Yabona, when you fly over, you don't see the ground. You can never be concrete, but scientifically, you can arrive faster. So, abantu abase London, they have never been to our villages. They have never been to our townships. They don't know the conditions that our people are living under, the degrading conditions. So when we are talking about the national democratic revolution, is to empower the people to live better, holistically, to have access to health, access to education, to sanitation, to clean running water, to energy, to food, to housing. Basic things. That's what our people are asking for. Our people are not asking to own aeroplanes. Why are they punished by a government entrusted with responsibility to take care of them? We are the second or the biggest economy on the African continent. This big economy, of course, take away the rebasing of the economy of Nigeria, where they are now counting the informal sector economy and aggregate it for investment purposes. We are also the most industrialized country on the African continent. And yet we can't solve the persistent crisis of poverty in our communities, because the wealth remains stolen by the colonialists. And who are these colonialists? The colonialists are the current inheritors of modern day imperialism, who have been given the resources of our country through the back door. Even after the dawn of freedom, we have never recovered the wealth of our country into the hands of our people. This is part of the biggest difficulties that we face. We have to tackle the transfer of wealth of our country to the people. This wealth cannot remain in the hands of a minority few. That is why they don't even want to teach history in our country, because the youth will revolt. They condemn us. The other day, my daughter comes from school and they say Mandela is a criminal because he was in prison. It's a crisis. So you always have to go to school to address these problems. And yet, it's 3 decades of democratic breakthrough. When we say this, comrades, and criticize whiteness, white minority control of the black majority is not racism. I see one of the newspapers say, since when the Communist Party is not talking about class? When we talk criticism of neoliberalism is a class, it's ideology. We're exposing the fatality of capitalism on the people and on society as a whole. They don't want us to tell them the truth. It is therefore critical, comrade, that we reaffirm your posture on radical policy changes in government, including on the way in which we fight crime in our communities. Comrade President, we had a brief discussion with you about some of the new trends of crime. We have discussed, for instance, one particular disturbing area in the Eastern Cape, Mtegezwe, where women have to put 200 rands on the window panes to avoid being raped. It's an extortion scandal. And still, women are being raped day in, day out in that particular area and in other parts of the country. On the one hand, the government is imposing austerity on the police and the criminal justice system as a whole. How are you going to fight this crime? At the same time, the capitalists are stealing the economy of the people day in, day out, expatriating our wealth abroad, locking our wealth in Zurich and other parts of the world. We are not interested in that as a government, because the focus is not on the living conditions of the people. Therefore, the time has come for us to intensify radical economic policies to uplift the working class and reject the neoliberal failed policies that are only buttressed by this high inequality and unemployment and poverty in our country. What we call the crisis of capitalist social reproduction. In other words, capitalism reproduces inequality and unemployment and poverty in our country. You have to tamper with this system. You cannot be in political office and continue to have this kind of a budget we received just a few days ago in Parliament. More capitalism. What is this thing going to do to our society? Except to condemn it to more poverty. You know, when the workers, the Paris Commune convened, workers took the first decision. The most critical one was that in France, the most critical decision was that all public representatives must be paid the salary of the worker. Nangizwanti. The Paris Commune, the first workers' government, but that decision that our public representatives will be paid the salary of the ordinary worker. That was an important litmus test. So that when you are a public representative, you know you work for society, you don't work for yourself. They don't give themselves this kind of salaries that they are denying workers. That is why we support the public sector workers to reject this insult of 3%. You must not even start there. In fact, we need more action against them. In fact, I don't know, I need to meet one day with your collective bargainers, the negotiators. Because when you have such an insult from government, you must respond harshly and you must give it a mutual reciprocal response. They must feel it. Particularly after they've played with your last negotiations and they robbed you for 4 up to 5 consecutive years, disrespecting the agreement that they've signed. For that reason, this round of bargaining should be higher and harder. We must say, comrades, the National Democratic Revolution has been derailed. There's no intention to bring back our movement to where it should be. Leaders are busy trying to justify this arrangement, this evil marriage they've made with the DA. There's nothing in the policies of the DA that resonate with us. It's as simple as that. And we have said to the ANC, we are not in alliance ourselves with these forces that we are in alliance with in government. And this changes how we look at each other going forward. Because the ANC has entered into a class relation on an important terrain of social delivery of services to the people. The terrain of the state. That is why I can tell you with my eyes closed, there's no way, whatever difference that will be there, these forces will never leave the GNU. Because they can't believe, it's like, uNkulunkulu ufikile kubo wavela wasiveza emini. They've achieved anything unthinkable that they ever thought would be possible. And they behave like they've got 80%. And they only have 20%. That is why, Comrade President, I fully agree with you. One of this lie that is repeated all the time, and we have to call it lie because we have tolerated it too much, that the people of this country voted for a GNU. Why is so Mike Shingange what I find I'm trying to get vote on America. La pagule la ballot la America. Let my questions ambalwa. I'll vote la njabanta babi. Go vote la foot na bantu baguma provinces. Ngoba is a federal system. In each province, they also have different questions on the ballot paper. So, mabapuma lapho banama ideas on different areas. Lapho kuzokuvote la nama judge. La nama judge kuthiwa independent la. Are independent from what? From the revolution. Not independent from imperialism. The same as the Treasury and the Reserve Bank. Uzo Masiti, lower the cost of living for the workers. We just marched on Thursday to the Treasury on Friday to call for the lowering of the cost of living for the working class. Those people will tell you that no, don't tell us we are free from politics. They are free from the National Democratic Revolution, from the revolutionary movement, but they are not free from the IMF and the World Bank. If you want to compare this, anyone, you can do readings of the World Economic Outlook by the IMF and the World Bank. Every single quarter they release this thing, and annually. And in their release, they talk about our country. They talk about all countries that they deal with. They talk about our country. Go and read there and listen to what the Reserve Bank is going to do, or the Treasury. They prescribe policy for us. This is a thing that must come to an end. So as a movement, comrade, we cannot capitulate to neoliberalism. We have to launch an offensive against neoliberalism. And I hope that this 30-year plan that POPCRU has outlined, and I love long-term planning without denouncing short-termism, without being short-termist or denouncing short-term issues, the immediate issues. This long plan that we have must be clear about how to defeat neoliberalism or capitalism in our country. Because a movement that has capitulated to neoliberalism cannot represent the people as a whole. Why even this matter is not tested in society? We asked the president, I said to him, President, you have enough time, take your time. After I was elected president, take your time, be patient, let's discuss this moment. Let's consult with the people. No, the comrades were in haste because Capital, after the president met with Capital, the CEOs, and Capital came out and issued a statement and said, we support the government of national unity. Then he had the legitimacy and the authority to move ahead to establish government of national unity because Capital has said so. When his core alliance partners, the SACP rejected this thing from the beginning, from not proper discussion, from some informal discussions. COSATU equally rejected this. Now there's a witness, I can say, two witnesses. The first witness is Comrade Solipetu. We met a day after the elections as the Alliance Secretariat. That's the first day we heard the so-called statement of intent, which is now so-called the foundation of the GNU. We heard it for the first time. We have never seen it before. And we said to the Secretary General of the ANC, siyabonga ukuthi usifundele le statement ngoba bekasifunda ku-iPad yakhe. Sathi sithumele sona. Ngoba kwathina asifuna ukuthenga ingulube sisake singayiboni singayazi ukuthi yini lento asithengisela yona. Mhlambe kunama paragraph angawafundi nokuwafunda. Sathi sithumele yona le document sifuna ukuyifunda. Senze ama comment. Wavuma. Sathi makubizwa meeting ye Alliance Political Council. Sikwazi ukuhlala phansi to discuss this moment. Imeeting I prepare by Alliance Secretariat the way it should be. Kubizwa an urgent meeting the following Tuesday, after the Monday when the Chief Justice pronounced Friday to be convening Parliament in Cape Town. Then the Political Council convenes. Masifika sithi awu maqabana thina sicabanga ukuthi sibizele ukudiscussa lesimo sukuso. But yeah, no, we felt we need to consult you to brief you about our negotiations. Now go Mike Shinganti, no Solipet, they were in this meeting. Now there are other witnesses. Sasuguma thina said no. Ngoba the meeting ye Political Council asipreparanga thina si Alliance Secretariat agenda yayo. And the direction kumele ithathe ama debate kumele abe khona. Sizoyibiza ukuthi informal meeting enisbriefa ngayo alama negotiations enikuwo. After that nizawubuya siconvene a political alliance political council. What do we mean by this? We meant we do not want that political council to be saying you did not convene a summit, you did not convene this, dealing with organizational issues. We wanted to discuss the political moment facing South Africa. That has not happened up to now. So you hear ANC leaders trying to justify that they consulted us. It's an insult actually for them to say that to us. And we are forced to say this to our membership because they keep lying in public that they consulted the alliance. We were never consulted on this matter. It's as simple as that. So they mustn't lie about this thing. Now, it's unfair when our comrades, even when we have a sense of respect, they don't want to accept our respect. Then we have to take out the glove and hit hard because our revolution is being sold out. Sipegile. Angeke sivume thina si-Communist Party lento. And we say to you as comrades of POPCRU, don't allow this thing to happen. You have raised many important issues, Comrade President. Our speech resonates. I'll jump some of the questions. But important to say, the foundation of this GNU is the neoliberal economic trajectory. That's the basis. Besides this question, it's also important to fulfill this point that the comments that they promised we will make on this statement of intent from the alliance were never taken into account. We asked to participate in the negotiating team. We appointed people. We appointed Tulas Nesi from our side. Kosato appointed Mike Shingangi. The two were never even invited to a single negotiating meeting because these things were dealt with in secret. They were premeditated. As early as March, we knew that there were secret talks going on with the DA. We raised these concerns. Why are there secret talks when we're in the middle of the campaign? Workers, you all went out, and we want to thank you for contributing to our elections program. Because we came to you to say, we don't have the capacity to go out. You said we will help so that we win this campaign. After whatever we have achieved in this campaign, we are no longer consulted. That attitude must come to an end. We will never accept it. Of course, we are having our special National Congress, Comrade President. You are invited. And we'll have another special guest in that Congress, who's also invited. But you are invited, Comrade President. I'm just saying, in case the General Secretary doesn't make you part of the delegation, if he doesn't make you part of that delegation, you will be my guest. In that special National Congress, comrade, we are going to dissect isimo esifacing the working class yase South Africa. We agree with you completely on many fronts. Sifuna ukuhlanganisa abantu bethu i-working class. Siqale kahle ngabantu abamnyama. Sifuna ukuyiphinda lento le ngoba sengi-attackwa o-Sunday Times bathi mina I'm whiteist. No, I represent the first non-racial organization on the African continent. But this first non-racial organization fought against racism. One of its main leaders was Joe Slovo, a white compatriot who fought against a white minority racist regime of apartheid. So we will continue to expose what racism is doing to our country. Counting itself will also unveil the hidden face of capitalism under racism. So we will dissect the state of the National Democratic Revolution and the living conditions of the people of this country. In that Congress, we are determining our independence as a Communist Party. This independence is not to weaken the forces of the National Democratic Revolution. It's to reinforce their strength. Because at the moment, we have no say. We have no single person accounting to us in government. They account to an organization that its soul has been stolen by the bourgeoisie. What do you do in such instances? We went to a joint working class leadership school organized by the Christian Institute that brought the Central Executive Committee of COSATU as well as the Central Committee of the Communist Party. They gave us time to dissect the moment. We started with the National Democratic Revolution. We presented an analysis from 1994 to now. We looked at every policy we have taken in government and the depreciation of the living conditions of the working class. Apart from the RDP that you spoke about, Comrade President, so well, that began to do certain things like building houses for our communities and so forth, every other thing declined. And it's been a one-way street of decline. It doesn't mean in this decline nothing has happened. There were many things that happened, many important things for that matter. But the gist of the life of the people has gone down. That is why even the campaign that we launched for the National Health Insurance, we launched this thing when Manto Chavala was still the minister as a Communist Party. It took more than 20 years to implement. It's been agreed, it's an act of parliament. It's stopped by the right-wing forces in this country. For the first time, I saw a beautiful advert on television. Comrade Aaron Mutwaledi explaining the reality of what capital is fighting against. In simple terms, he says, we spend 570 billion rands a year on health as a country. This is from the public sector. It's not from the private sector, it's the public sector budget. It says this money, 51% of it, that's just above half of this 570 billion. It goes to only 14% of the population. The remaining 86% shares less than half, 49% of this 570 billion. So capital has commodified the health of our people, has commodified the misery of our people, the suffering of our people. They live on it, they profit on it. This is the fundamental issue, and yet we have a government entertaining such kind of nonsense. Because the CEOs, the capitalist CEOs, led by one Martin Kingston, what they say is government policy. We are sick and tired of this. If we have a movement in charge, a movement elected by the people, it must act like that. A movement elected by the people. And therefore, we must end this capitalist orientation of the state. Because the ANC policies even say we are mixed economy policy framework on every aspect. But they never follow the mixed economy. Ask what's the socialist orientation of government, for instance. They can only tell you about capitalist orientation of government. I don't want to talk about this man that you were talking about, Usko, because he's my senior. And when I talk about it, I cry. But you explained it nicely, Comrade President. I don't have to repeat it, but I'm disappointed. And so is the Communist Party. Lastly, comrades, on the international side, there's a crisis that you have asked me to speak about, Comrade President, in the Middle East. But this crisis is a general crisis of capitalism international. We have reached a situation where the world capitalist system is in a perpetual form of crisis, a crisis of profit maximization. In other words, when capital can make profit, it creates a crisis. Because it's out of crisis that capital makes money. In many instances, that is the general world capitalist crisis that is dominated by the oil and military industrial complexes. They are intertwined. So in other words, the oil economy, the control of the oil economy, you use the military to do that, which is what the USA is doing. At the same time, you build the military to do other things, to occupy other states, and to make other states irrelevant. In this case, world capitalism and its crisis has made its own crisis a universal crisis of humanity. And that is why when we want to take independent decision as a state, world capitalism punishes us. At the moment, we've got about 55 wars, active wars in the world. We are only being told about the big ones. For instance, the biggest war at the moment in the world is the front line in Ukraine, which is a proxy of the world imperial system against the country of Russia. That's a big front line. That front line will determine, in the main, the future of the world. And let's hope in that front line there's no use of nuclear weapons. But it's almost close. Another key battle and war is in the Middle East. This is an important leg of imperialism in the Middle East. They want to control the Middle East through the proxy of Israel, a creation of imperialism through the Balfour Declaration in 1904. They continued with this. 1914, they then finalized the arrangements about Israel. And therefore, taking the land of Palestinians, now wanting to go back to medieval years of biblical history in order to occupy Palestinian land. And this is affirmed by the United Nations after the Second World War. Then they create, in 1948, the State of Israel. So, Ukoko, Comrade President, was right in one thing. She was talking about biblical Israel. She was not talking about this modern day Israel, the creation of imperialism. This modern day Israel is a murderous genocidal state that is brutalizing people, killing women and children, civilians, bombing houses every single day in Gaza, in the rest of Palestine, in Lebanon. Now they are destroying that particular country. Just 2 days ago, they were destroying villages. Now, Comrade President Dr. Kebekulu, I'm a military man. I've studied military engineering. One of my in military engineering is to know how easy it is to destroy, but how difficult it is to build. What you have built for centuries and hundreds of years, we destroy that in seconds from military engineering. We wire this thing with TNT and other types of bombs, and press of a button, everything is diminished in few seconds. They are destroying entire villages, block of flats with people inside. This cannot be the state of God. This reactionary right-wingism, Zionism of the West order. Unfortunately, this Zionism is controlling politics in the world, including here in South Africa. The Jewish cartel is at the core of what happens here in this country, as they control also the US. The outcome of today's elections in the US are neither here nor there. Whatever is the outcome, the masses, the world will still experience imperialism more strengthened after these elections. So the world capitalist crisis, on the basis of wanting to maximize profitability of capital, is embarking on these wars. On the African continent, we've got a massive war in Sudan. The same war of imperialism. They've stretched this war all over. Now, they are even threatening countries that have become independent. Ebona Tinela, Abu Titlek, Mabakala Bayenza Lento Abu President. Bakala Mok dismantler in nuclear weapon yet. That was a castration of our power as a political power, as a society. But Bayenza from a racist perspective, because Abu Titlek, the racist leadership, they could not accept that the black man will have control of the nuclear weapon. So as they were discussing the transition, they couldn't hand over to the black leadership the nuclear weapon. So they had to destroy them. But because as a liberation movement, which is anti-weapons of mass destruction, we supported that tendency. But the decision was a racist decision. Today, the countries that are standing, that are confronting imperialism, are the countries that are using the same weapons that they have. That's why they can't touch Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They can only punish him with sanctions, but they can't do anything from him. They can't touch Iran. Iran can respond anytime. It has the capacity, it's independent, it builds its own military power. Because the world capitalist system is buttressed by military power of the UN, the United States, as well as the European countries. This is the crisis that we face today of modern day imperialism. It is in this regard, Comrade President, that the war in the Middle East remains a war of imperialism. It's a Zionist war against the people. Imperialism has endorsed Zionism. Of course, comrade, we want to say lastly, we want to strengthen our resolve to work with you as POPCRU in your struggle for collective bargaining. We are not just members of the SACP or POPCRU, but even of other progressive trade unions. We should be united against any force that brings exploitation in our country, and we must oppose imperialism in any manner that it comes. And we stand for complete emancipation of our people. We say together we can build a sustainable, powerful organization that will fearlessly defend the rights of workers, secure the gains of collective bargaining, and advance the vision of a socialist society. Our path should not be and will not be dictated by those who want to cling to the legacy of apartheid or the profiteers or even their own collaborators, even when these collaborators are wearing our own colors. We must distinguish amongst us those who are selling out our own movement. In this regard, this 30 years that we have now defined will be paved with many sacrifices, but it must be driven by revolutionary commitment and transformation and an anti-imperialist agenda to bring back the national democratic revolution to be on track. Comrade Mike Shingago was telling me something. He will explain this thing when he comes to the podium, what he thinks of the national democratic revolution. That is the simplest. I hope he can explain this. I'm not going to touch it, Comrade Mike, so that he can explain it in the simplest way you explained it to me in our own consultation. And I got full explanation. We must reaffirm our commitment and dedication to South Africa, where the wealth of our country serves its people, not the pockets of the few, the exploiters and their neoliberal hangers-on embedded inside our own movement. By making this criticism inside our own movement, comrades, we're not being divisive. We're just telling the truth. Now, this is personal, but I have to raise it, Comrade President, because you raised it. 5 ANC officials attacked me. 5. From the President, Deputy President, Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, National Chairperson, for saying, no, comrades, we don't agree with the GNU. Now, it is clear, we must protect him. We must also say to the DA, hands off Panyaza. Even to this collaborationist element in the ANC, hands off Panyaza. Because what business does Helen Zille have to do with the ANC affairs? But because they think they are now in charge and in control, they are even telling ANC leaders what to do. Now, they even delve into something that is fundamentally wrong, to abuse democratic centralism. Yabona le gathering le. Jongoba respond to the 10th Congress, Comrade President. Now you are in the CEC. The outcomes of here, they have arisen from collective discussions from your provincial congresses, now into the CEC, coming also from your Congress. When you are implementing these decisions, you no longer ask permission for implementation. That's what we call centralism in application. When you implement collective decisions, what we are having now, this forum, we can characterize it as participatory democracy, proletarian democracy, where the workers keep out their views about the affairs of their own union and they curve the direction that the union must take. When we have accepted that decision, the implementation is centralist. You are no longer going to discuss the implementation. Now we have a situation where the small group of the NEC meet by themselves, no discussion with anyone. They implement such a radical measure to collaborate with the enemy of the revolution when people are asking why, but it's democratic centralism. It's an abuse of the term of democratic centralism. In democratic centralism, actually, it's a pillar of democracy. Before it is participatory democracy, open discussions, democratic debates in the organization. Democratic debates are shut down because the leadership says so. You will kill the organization. When they convened regional organizations of the ANC across the country, was to go and impose the idea of the GNU. Now they want to impose this idea of the GNU on local government. No discussion, no consultation with anyone. We will never accept that. And it is in this regard, comrade, that we say, rise to this challenge as a movement and rise with courage. And we can always find solidarity with us. The battle for workers' rights It's the battle for the soul of our country. It's the battle for the soul of our nation. It's the battle for the soul of the National Democratic Revolution. This battle can never be lost, particularly after so many sacrifices. We say, let's defend this with our might and march forward to a sustainable, militant, and uncompromising trade union movement in defense of the National Democratic Revolution and in advance to socialism. Down with neoliberalism, down. Down with capitalism, down. Forward to socialism, forward. Long live POPCRU, long live. Unite, POPCRU, unite. Unite, COSATU, unite. Unite, the alliance, unite. Defeat the enemy, the alliance defeat. Thank you very much.
If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this. And as always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.